What is up, guys? So this is going to be the beginner's guide for League of Legends. League can be a very complicated game. All of these things are going to be really important. Maybe some of them you know, maybe some of them you don't. And we're going to go over the most important thing to know about League of Legends, whether you're a beginner or a veteran, at the end. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. So, team roles: mid lane, AD carry, support, top lane. What you need to know is pretty much where each of these roles go. So when we're playing a game of League of Legends, mid goes mid, jungle is going to go into the jungle and kind of go around this area, can go into the enemy jungle around this area, right? They're going to play around these neutral objectives and so forth. Top lane is going to go up to top lane. Top lane is usually your side laners for the most part. And then you have bot lane, which is going to be your AD carry and support. So if you have a friend that you're learning the game with, this is one of the best places to learn together. Now let's talk about these roles specifically and what they do. Mid lane is primarily going to be your assassins and your mages. Now mid lane is known for kind of being a higher mechanical and scrappy lane where you're going to fight a lot, and then you're also going to be looking to roam if you're winning lane, whether to just get vision in the enemy jungle or just to help your team out. Now, jungle itself is kind of like the chess player role of the game. A lot of what's happening is all in fog, right? So you don't necessarily know what's going on. So because of that, the jungler's job is to kind of predict, make decisions around objectives, maybe go up and gank lanes and help out laners. It really depends on the jungle you're playing and your style. So if that sounds like something you'd like, that might be for you. Top lane is going to be where you just have a bunch of fighting, a bunch of really big guys fighting it out, big champions going back and forth. It is pretty much the quintessential 1v1 lane. So if you like kind of fighting 1v1 and you like testing your skill and your wave management against other players, top lane might be for you. Now support is exactly what it sounds like. Support's job is to get vision, to roam, help the other lanes, to go around, do things around the map, sometimes leave out of base and not go back bot lane so that you can help with objectives with your jungler, right? Your job is to support the team, whether it's through vision, whether it's through CC, that's your role. Now, AD carry is attack damage carry. The AD carry is a very mechanically intensive role, just like mid, both mechanically intensive roles. And your goal as the AD carry is usually to scale well, to try and scrap a good amount in the bot lane, but to secure a lead, because AD carries have the highest damage scaling in the game normally, next to mid laners. So you guys have the ability to really crank out a lot of damage later in the game. Most AD carries have some mobility, but they're not going to be your hyper mobile. They're going to be more like your marksman, your ranged characters, etc. So, food for thought. Alright, so that pretty much covers the roles. We'll move on to the next thing here. Alright, so going through some of the examples with build, we're going to start off, and hypothetically, let's say that we're playing Ahri, right? You select your champion. You can also see champions by selecting the role that you've decided to play, right? So let's say we're going mid lane. Let's say that we're going to play Ahri, right? So when we do that, we're going to lock in. Then this button right here, this is your rune pages. You're going to select a recommended rune page for what you want. It'll give you summoner spells, and it'll set up your runes for you. We can go more in depth in runes in another video. And I apologize if I sound a little congested right now, guys. I am sick, but I really wanted to get this video put together for you guys. So, next thing we're going to talk about is champions in those roles, right? So you've got the option to look at certain junglers, you've got mid laners, you've got top laners, AD carries, and supports, right? So when you're looking at all of this and you're thinking like, well, what do I pick? How do I know what to pick when I'm starting out in League? So pick something in your role. This is really easy. You can go to OPGG, you can go to League of Crash, you can go to u.gg, and you can find something that's in your role. The reason you're going to want to play a champion in your role is it's going to make it a lot easier to learn your role. When you don't play a champion that's in your role, there's a bunch of nuance that comes into that decision where you have to change a bunch of things that would normally be standard. The most important thing, though, is that you pick something that you enjoy. You know, I also think it's a good idea to pick something simple, but if you really don't like any of the simple champs and you don't think they're cool, you don't think you're going to enjoy playing them, it is better to pick something complicated that you genuinely want to learn and improve at, and that you excuse me, that you enjoy playing, rather than playing something that's just simple and easy, right? The game at the end of the day is about having fun. So pick something where you're going to have fun, right? If you look at these champions as starting champions and you're like, I don't really like these. They don't really seem fun to me. I was a Gangplank one trick, right? Gangplank's one of the hardest champions in the game, but if you have fun doing something, take the time to master it, look up the guides on YouTube, pay attention to the one tricks, and you'll be successful. So it's pretty easy when we're looking at champions where to go from there. So once you've picked your champion and you say, hey, I'm going to be a Darius, man. That's my champion. That's what I want to do, man. The next thing you got to learn is laning, right? So 4 of the 5 roles, right, have to lane. So primarily, if the majority of the decisions you make out of what role you want to play and what champions you want to play, you're going to have to do laning. So the important thing is that laning is a time to collect gold and XP, right? Don't know where that went, probably disappeared out, but the reason it's a time to collect gold and XP is because you're scaling. Your champion's job is to get a lead, sorry. XP and gold can be collected via champions. It can be collected via champions when you kill them. It can be collected via minions, right? And then it can be collected via tower plates. Now, the important thing to realize is this is XP and gold, right? And this is XP and gold, right? But the thing you want to keep an eye out is towers are only gold. Now, they give you more gold, but they don't give you XP. So don't overvalue towers sometimes. It can get you killed when you're so focused on getting a tower that you miss out on guaranteed XP and gold from champion kills and or cannon minions. Now, not every character is going to have the ability to kill their opponent in a 1v1 early in the game or maybe mid in the game. Different champions are stronger at different times in the game. So if you're playing a champion that likes to fight later on, needs a lot of items, it's important that you pay attention to collecting gold and XP from minions so that you scale well. Sometimes the smart strategic thing to do is to not fight. Now, laning involves trading, it involves getting vision, it involves priority, tempo. These are a lot of advanced concepts that I have other videos on. Feel free to check them out. But for the sake of this guide being just for beginners, the important thing to understand is that when you're laning, your goal is to get minions and gold. XP, minions, gold, right? Towers are a nice bonus, kills are a nice bonus, but really focus on the minions. Really focus on the minions, that last hitting, that gold, that XP. So we can move forward from there and kind of get into some examples. So we'll go into some examples. Everybody, so what we're going to talk about right now is we're going to talk about laning. The important thing about laning is that it's pretty much used so that you can collect resources. Your goal during laning phase is to get as much XP gold as possible, so that way later on in the game you're able to participate in fights. Now there's several ways to do this. One way would be to take tower plates. So as you can see here, I got 125 gold from knocking down that tower plate, right? I can continue, knocking down this tower. And it's worth notifying that tower plates do disappear at 14 minutes, right? So if it's after 14 minutes, you can't get tower plates anymore. And taking the tower will give you a big bonus of extra gold, right? Tier 2 towers are worth the most. Tier 1 towers are worth a good amount. Inhib towers, not worth so much, right? So Tier 1s and Tier 2 towers are where you're going to find the most amount of gold. Now, as we look at this, the question is, okay, so getting a tower, that's a great way to get gold. Not going to give you XP though. The only thing that gives you XP is assist, kills, and when minions die around you. So it's really important that you stay in range of minions when they die. You can see when this guy dies here, plus 62 XP, right? Now luckily, I'm already level 18 here, so it's not going to affect me. But that's why it's important that you learn how to last hit a minion, right? Because you only get the gold if you kill the minion, right? So unless I last hit here, I'll give you an example here. I'll do some damage to this minion, right? I hit that minion 3 times, it died, but I don't get the gold because I didn't actually last hit the minion, right? So using your abilities and using your auto attacks to last hit minions, very important so that you can actually collect gold, collect resources. Now, killing your opponent in lane will also give you gold and experience, and it denies them resources, obviously, because they're dead and they have to go back to base. So that's a really important aspect of kind of what we do during the laning phase. But if you don't have the ability to kill your enemy laner, and you may not know the matchup, you're not sure what their champion does or anything, the best thing you can do is just make sure that you're farming the minions, getting CS, right, which stands for creep score, right, minion kills. You can hit tab to check your CS, and then taking that gold and that XP, going back to the shopkeeper, buying your items, and you can generate a lead that way and make yourself stronger. So that's pretty much it for the basics of laning. The only other thing to cover during laning is that there are going to be instances where you're going to try and hit the enemy champion with spells. Just make sure when you're doing that you're not giving up a ton of minions when you're going to fight, because otherwise it's not going to be worth it most of the time. Alright, so that's pretty much it for laning, and we will keep moving on. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is item builds, right? A lot of people think about item builds and they go, huh, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to know what to build? Well, the first thing you can do is you can use an analytical website. You can go to u.gg, opgg, League of Graphs, look up a one trick, look up that champion, and they're going to tell you what's most commonly built. If you're a beginner, however, and you're not trying to do something funky, follow the shop recommendations, right? As a beginner, this guy over here, this shop guy, he's going to be your best friend. He'll tell you exactly what you need to build. Just keep picking from the recommended section, and when you look at the recommended section, it'll also have little icons that tell you, you know, if you're playing against this champion or not playing against that champion, what may be better in your specific game. Do not, I repeat, do not use YouTube for item builds. The reason why I say don't use YouTube for item builds, and please listen to me, is a lot of YouTubers will create funky builds that are not really optimal. They're just good and fun for the video they're making, and they're doing it to get clicks and to get attention for the fun of the game. They're not optimal builds that are going to work in every single game you play, or that are going to be optimal against the majority of champions. So do not use YouTube for item builds. You can use it for champion guides, but I don't recommend it for item builds. I recommend you follow the shop, and I recommend you use analytical websites. The other important thing is, if there are items that you think are really cool, but they're not built on your champion, don't build them. Build for your champion, okay? And if you want to play a bunch of magic damage and magic builds and magic, you know, based equipment from the shopkeeper because you think those items are cool, well, then there's a role for that. It's called mid lane. It's where the mages go. Switch to mid, start playing a mage, right? The other thing is that patch notes exist. Now, every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, depending, you know, on the deadlines and everything, the game updates with a patch. Now, the patch notes will always be released. A lot of times you'll see videos come out on YouTube, but it's important to stay up on the patch notes because there are a lot of things that change in this game for items and champions, and every 2 weeks you read through the patch notes and it'll tell you, hey, does the item you usually build, is it getting weaker? Is it getting stronger? Is it getting a buff? Is it getting a nerf? This will kind of help keep your finger on the pulse of the game as you play. As we go through here, right, we're going to talk about several things here, just starting out. So what we're going to talk about is itemization, right? So here is your shop, right? You're going to left click on the shop, and then it is going to pull up everything that you can do. Your boots are always going to be over here. Then here are your wards, starting items, things of that nature, potions, health potions, etc. Normally, what you're going to want to do is, unless you're the support or the jungler, they're going to go Oracle Lens, which helps them sweep for stealth wards. You're going to want to get a stealth ward, and then you're just going to want to follow what is generally recommended. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a bunch of gold. And what you can do is you'll buy an item, right? Now, if you want to sell an item, you just right click in your inventory and you'll sell that item. Now, hypothetically, what's going to happen is as you're in a game where there's multiple champions and you're playing against other champions, it's going to, the shopkeeper will recommend certain items for you. So if you see here, I'll buy my boots, right? These are the boots I want, Sorcerer's Shoes. Why? Because I'm a magic damage champion, movement speed, magic penetration. Then they're going to start recommending you items. Generally good, generally good. Sometimes it'll say if it's specifically good against the champions you're playing against, and little champion icons will show up down here. This is where itemization gets a little tricky, but not too tricky. Just read what the item does. So, damaging ability shoots 6 shots, deal an additional 60 magic damage to the target and nearby enemies. Remaining shots fire on the primary target. Okay. Gives you ability power, mana, ability haste. Ability power, mana, ability haste. Ability power, mana, ability haste. Seems like these just have different effects, right? And then as you buy things, you'll see that, okay, it's going to start recommending different items to me. So this is magic amplification, this is to survive burst, this is magic penetration. You know, magic penetration sounds pretty good. Magic amplification sounds pretty good. I'm going to sell this, and let's say that, you know, maybe I want something to survive some burst, right? So now we're full build, right? We've got all of our items down here in our HUD, and then you can click and drag these around. So that's pretty much where it goes for itemization. It's pretty simple. I recommend that you either look up something on OPGG, u.gg, look at item builds for your champion, or just follow what the shop recommends. It seems so basic to just left click here and then follow what it's telling you to do, but until you play a lot more League and you get a lot more familiar with all of the items and their nuances, that's going to be the best thing to do. What's really important is that you pay attention to this active, right? So Zonia's Hourglass, when you look at this, it has that active. These don't. So what that means is these abilities, or the items here, they will trigger on their own. If you buy an active item, it's going to be hotkeyed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or you can change this key binding, and then you have to hit the button in order for the item to actually function. Okay? So, something important just to keep in mind. Alright, that's pretty much it for items, and we will move on. So we'll keep on moving here. So the next thing to talk about is enemy objectives. Enemy objectives are pretty simple. You've got towers, you've got inhibitors, and you've got the Nexus, right? If you kill the Nexus, the game is going to blow up. The Nexus is going to blow up and you're going to win the game, right? It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. Now, inhibitors, when you kill inhibitors, they're going to spawn super minions. And the super minions are empowered minions that are going to help push waves. But they also give the enemy more gold because those minions are worth more to kill. And then towers, which are pretty basic. Towers have a radius. If you attack an enemy champion under a tower, or a tower is not already attacking minions, the tower will aggro onto you as the champion down here, right? And it'll start blasting you with these big tower shots that'll eventually kill you if you're not careful, right? So it's pretty basic going there. We'll go through some examples, but there's not much to cover here. Inhibitors spawn super minions, blowing up the Nexus wins the game, and killing the towers gives you gold and gets you closer to, you know, the enemy Nexus. They also shoot tower shots. Be careful out there. Now, the last thing that we talked about was enemy objectives. The next thing to talk about is neutral objectives, right? So dragon is number 1. It's going to spawn down here. There will be 1 to 4 dragons that are elemental drakes. The elemental drakes spawn out of these, and they give different buffs depending on what spawns: infernal, mountain, ocean, hextech, chemtech, cloud. Now the first and second dragon that spawn will be different. The third and fourth dragon will always be the same because the map is going to change after the second drake, and you're going to find out what kind of map you're playing on, and it'll be a elemental map that then gives you different bonuses and changes the landscape. Now, when you get 4 dragons, you get what's called a Dragon Soul, which is a permanent buff for your team that's very powerful for the rest of the game. The one that we didn't mention is Elder. Elder gives you an execution when you kill people, but it only spawns after you've already cleared 4 drakes off of the map, and they spawn every 5 minutes. So the earliest you could get 4 Dragon Souls if you were playing absolutely insanely perfectly, and you were killing dragon in like 1 second, would be sometime around 25 minutes. The next thing that spawns is up here. It's going to be the Void Grubs, the Baron, and the Rift Herald, right? So this is up here. And when we're looking at the dragons, these are over here, right? Now, void grubs are little grubbies that spawn a bunch of little void mites that attack towers and help you take towers quicker. The Rift Herald is a big, big, big crab that spawns after the void grubs. When you kill it, you have the ability to actually hop inside and ride it down a lane to either escape, or you can run it into a tower and it'll do big damage on a tower. It also knocks people up while you're riding in it. Now, Baron is the final thing that spawns up here. It spawns at 20 minutes. And once Baron spawns at 20 minutes, you get Baron. It empowers the minions on your team, makes them faster, makes them do more damage, makes them tankier. And primarily, once you get Baron, what people are looking to do is they're looking to push the lanes afterwards so they can pressure in towards the base to get to the Nexus and blow it up. Baron is a very big buff for ending the game. So neutral objectives can be taken by anybody. It can be taken by the blue team or the red team. A lot of times there will be big team fights around these, and primarily that's why it's important to build up your leads in the early game in laning, so that way when these big fights start happening around the objectives, you're ready for them. So we'll go through some examples on the map with this as well. And I've also attached a guide here so you know what everything looks like. And if you get lost and you can't tell what dragon's what or what certain things are, this should help you ahead of time before you get into the game.
Alright guys, so what we're going to start talking about now is we're going to start talking about the neutral objectives. So, important thing to know about neutral objectives is pretty much that dragons always spawn on the top side of the map. So, or I apologize, on the bot side of the map, right? So if I go down to the bot side of the map here, here's the dragon. Dragon will always spawn right here. When you kill a dragon, what happens is you get a buff for your team, right? And then when you kill 4 dragons, you get a giant buff based on the dragon type for the map. So once 2 dragons have been killed, right? So you'll see the second dragon has spawned here, and it's going to be an ocean, right? We know it's going to be an ocean because of the symbol here on the wall, right? So we'll bring in that ocean drake now. We'll kill this dragon. And you'll see here that I will hit tab as well. I'm going to turn my cooldowns off just so I can do this a little bit quicker. Auto rush my mana as well. Okay, so when I hit tab here, you can see we killed the Cloud Dragon, so it's giving us 5% out of combat movement speed, 5% slow resistance, and then the Ocean Dragon is giving us 2% health every 5 seconds. Now we know that this map is now a mountain map. Now what's that mean? Well, the third dragon that's going to spawn is going to be a mountain dragon, and as you can see here, there's now new terrain out on the map. This happens depending on the dragon type. You'll kind of pick up on this as you play. It's kind of difficult to show you all the different dragon types for maps, but there are, let me double check here just to make sure. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different dragons. So there can be 6 different map types depending on the dragon that spawns. Now, with that being said, the third and fourth dragon that spawn will always be the map type. They no longer switch around to be different dragons at that point. Now, the other important thing to know is that Elder Dragon cannot spawn until after 4 dragons have been killed. Elder Dragon is the fifth dragon that spawns, and it can keep on spawning depending on how long the game goes. So, what you'll see here is we have 3 dragons. I'm going to kill this 4th dragon so I can show you what it looks like when you get the full stacked buff. Okay, so now, the mountain dragon soul is what we get by killing 4 dragons. Now, getting soul for mountain dragon gives us a 332 health shield. Now, It's dependent on your stats, how big the shield is going to be, but gives you a permanent shield that, will get broken down, excuse me, but comes back every 5 seconds as long as you don't take damage. Now, the final dragon that spawns is the Elder Dragon itself. Now, the Elder Dragon has a unique buff, and what it does, we will show you. Now, the Elder Dragon, unlike the other dragons, has a buff that is timed, right? So the Elder Dragon buff only lasts for a certain amount of time. So the way that it works is if you hit an enemy champion, it causes them to burn for 75 true damage over 3 seconds, damaging an enemy below 20% health, blast them with dragon fire, and does their max health true damage. So it pretty much executes people under 20% health. I'll show you what that looks like real quick. We just need to grab an enemy dummy here, right? And then you can see, right, the Elder Dragon just showed up and blasted it, right? You can see, because it's under 20% health, the Elder Dragon is just going to keep shooting him, right? As long as I do damage, and then boom. So, it can be a very powerful endgame buff that can allow you to pretty much ace the enemy team. Now where we're going to go next is we're going to go to the top side of the map. This is where the other neutral objectives spawn. And the neutral objectives are primarily the jungler's concern. However, the team does have to play for them as the games go late because of the amount of stats and the ability to close out a game that they give the team that secures them, right? The more neutral objectives you secure, the bigger the chances that you're going to win the game. Alright, so, statistically. Now what you can see spawning here are the Void Grubs. The Void Grubs are some neat little, some neat little minions that got added to the game this season that are neutral objectives. Now when you take them, each one will heal after one of the grubs dies. Now you can get up to 6 grubs. Now the question is, okay, you got 3 grubs or 6 grubs, so what do these grubs do? So you can see here now that there's a stack, right? This is the Mountain Dragon Soul, this is the aspect of the Dragon Soul, this is the Touch of the Void. The Touch of the Void comes from the, excuse me, the Void Grubs. So your attacks apply true damage, damage over time, effects to structures increased by each stack of Touch of the Void. At 4 stacks, you also summon a Void Might when you attack structures. And the cooldown is 15 seconds at 15 seconds. And when you have 6 Void Grubs, you summon 2 Void Mites instead. So I'll show you what this looks like. So when I auto this tower, you'll see I can auto it, right? And you can see this little true damage burning stack. Now, what it's saying is, once you get more than 3, you get 4 or 5 or 6 Void Grubs, what happens is you will actually spawn Void Mites. Now, Void Mites are these little itty-bitty little dudes that are popping out of the Void Grubs right now. You will be able to spawn those yourself when you go and attack a tower structure. So, we'll clear these out. We'll get 6 Void Grubs. We'll go up top here. And I will show you what this looks like, right? So we auto attack, and then you can see the 2 little Void Grubs pop out, and they start hitting the tower at the same time and applying that dot effect. Helps you take towers very, very quickly, especially if you have 5 people hitting a tower, all spawning Void Mites, all doing true damage to the tower structure. It's a big deal. Now, finally, the final neutral objective you have to worry about and keep an eye out for is the Baron. Now, Baron itself, we should be able to spawn here. Yep, there it is. It's coming. The Baron. Now, Baron. What does Baron do? It is a big, big, big monster that normally you're going to need your team or 2 or 3 people to fight. There are some people in the game who can solo Baron if they're really, really ahead. Normally you would not be able to do what I'm doing right now, right? But for sake of example and showing you how the Baron functions and what it does, right, we're going to do this. So what Baron buff does, and you can see it right here, this unit has the favor of Baron Nashor and has the following bonuses: Empowered Recall, increased attack damage and ability power. Nearby allied minions are vastly enhanced. It also changes the scuttle when Baron spawns at 20 minutes, and it gives you AoE vision when you kill it and clears wards. Also, the red buff and blue buff will change at 20 minutes after Baron, and when you kill the buff, it grants the blue buff or the red buff to your entire team when you take it. Blue buff gives you mana, red buff gives you, I should clarify. So, red buff gives you health regen and damage over time with a slow, right? So when I take this red buff here, you'll see the unit recovers health while not fighting. Also, their basic attacks burn and slow for several seconds. Blue buff gives you this unit has increased mana and energy regen and ability haste, right? So blue buff is great for mages. Red buff is great for people who really, really want to scrap. Now, if you see I come up here and I stand here because I have the Baron buff, you'll see what it does to these minions. These minions are bigger, they are faster, they are stronger, and they are purple. So, the reason that Baron buff is so great is because later on in the game, it allows you to take towers extremely quickly. So, that's pretty much it for the neutral objectives. I'm going to be putting a key out in the next slide so that you guys can see exactly what they all look like. But we will keep on moving forward. Alright guys, so kind of picking up on the example video from last time, we took Baron, and now we're going to talk about enemy objectives. So enemy objectives, first and foremost, is going to be towers, right? Pretty self-explanatory. There's the first tower, the second tower, third tier tower, or you'll hear them referred to as first, second, and inhib tower. And then an inhib is an inhibitor. So let's talk about how the game works, right? The goal is to take the towers, right? And the reason we take the towers is because we need to get into the enemy base and blow up their nexus, right? And to blow up their nexus, we have to get all of the towers down. Okay, so once you've gotten all the towers down, you're going to move to the next part, and you're going to take an inhibitor. Now, inhibitors are usually something that you only want to take when you know you're going to be ending the game soon, and I will explain why. The reason why is because once you kill an inhibitor, what's going to happen, we're going to go back to base real quick, and I will show you guys. So, we killed an inhibitor in the top lane. So now what's going to happen is, when the next minion wave spawns, it's not going to have a cannon minion with it. What it's going to have is it's going to have a super minion with it. Now, super minion sounds kind of crazy. What is a super minion? What does that look like? That's a super minion. They're these little minions in these giant mechs. They do a ton of damage to towers. They're very strong. They push waves very quickly. So once you have a bunch of super minions coming out of the base, right, and you've taken more than one inhibitor, it makes it pretty easy to siege the base. Now once you've taken 3 inhibitors, every single wave spawns with 2 super minions. That can be very, very potent, especially if you're pushing into a base and everything. And then once you've done that, and you've got all of your super minions, you don't necessarily have to take all 3 inhibitors to end a game, but you do need to take 1 inhibitor to end a game, because the game itself will not let you attack the Nexus while the inhibitors are up. I've had it happen in games where an inhibitor will respawn, because they do respawn after a certain amount of time, right? And then we can't damage the Nexus. Now you can see here how tanky these super minions are and how much damage they can do to structures. It's pretty impressive. So, once you've got your super minions, once you've got your inhibitors, once you've taken all the towers, the final thing to do is to blow up the enemy nexus and win the game. It's pretty self-explanatory. There's not a lot to enemy objectives, but that's it. Alright, and we will keep moving forward with the guide. Last thing we're going to go over is going to be the player HUD. So on the player HUD, you can see your stats, right? So you can see that you've got attack damage, you can see that you've got magic damage, your magic resist, your armor, your attack speed, your cooldown, your movement speed, and your critical chance. Those are all of the different things on the HUD.
It's also going to have your abilities. It's going to have your option to level up an ability when you level up. It's got your XP bar right here, and then it's got your character icon right here. So it's also going to give you your summoner spells. It's going to give you your HP, which is your health, and it's going to give you your mana. If you don't have mana and you're like Zed or some other characters, you might have a special resource for Zed. It's called energy, right? It's going to give you your items. It's going to show you your hotkeys to activate those items. So you would hit 2 if you wanted to use that health pot, how much gold you're sitting on currently, and your ward, and when your ward is going to come back up based on the timer, right? It will also display all of the timers for the cooldowns on your ability. The other key important thing, if this looks familiar to you, that's good, when you play League, is you're going to have a mini map that's down in the bottom corner of your screen. Now the mini-map will show you where your allies are, but it will also show you where your enemies are. So if you're pushed all the way up to this tower, right, and all 5 of the enemies are missing, they're somewhere in fog, right, it might be a good idea to back off so you don't die, right? These are important things to know, and the HUD gives you a ton of information. So health, mana, your unique value, your cooldown spells, summoners, items, and minimap. We'll go through some of this going forward.
All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about here is we're going to talk about the HUD. The HUD shows you all of your different stats. So attack damage, ability power, armor, magic resist, attack speed, ability haste, critical strike, and movement speed. If you hit C and you hold it down, it'll show you some other information like lethality, lifesteal, magic penetration. It'll show you how much your runes have impacted the game. And the runes are what you picked at the beginning, right, when you were in champion, so like using that recommended function. Now, what else you can see on your HUD is your character icon, how close you are to leveling up, your passive, your abilities, your health, and your mana. Now, it also is going to have this icon when it's time for you to level up an ability, right? I leveled up to 18, so I'm just going to level up all of my abilities here. And you can tell how many ability points from your level ups you have in an ability here. Each time you put an ability point into a level, makes that ability stronger, right? Pretty basic. And then you have your summoner spells here, right? Flash and teleport is what I have, right? So if I were to go over here and click on this tower, or I could click on the mini map, either or, right? I will activate my teleport by hitting the F key, and then I will teleport over, right? That's what this ability does. Um, the best way to utilize your HUD when starting out is to just read what your abilities do so that you're aware, right? And you can hover over them on the HUD and it will show them. And then you can see this press shift to show more info. That will show you the scaling and potentially the timings for some of the abilities and exactly what they do, okay? The next thing you're going to see on your HUD is going to be your items specifically, and if any of your item actives are on cooldown, and then your wards, which also have a cooldown, right? So I can put down both of these wards here, and then you can see there's a 105-second cooldown until they are back up again. Now, when you hit tab, it will also show you kind of a snapshot of other champions' items, and it will show this little green dot. Now, when you're playing in a full stacked game, the champion icons will show up on this side of your screen, and this little green dot indicates if their ultimate is on cooldown or off cooldown. So if I were to use my ultimate right now, right, then we'll wait for it to run out in duration, and you'll see what I'm talking about here. So my ultimate is now on cooldown, right? You see here, this little gauge, when it fills up, it'll be green, and my ultimate will show off cooldown. The most important part about your HUD outside of that is going to be your mini-map, right? The mini-map shows you where you are on the map. It also shows you areas you're not familiar with. So you can see here that I don't know what's over here, so it's blacked out, it's in fog. Now what's important about wards is I can put a ward down, right? I can leave, and I can be over here, but I can see what's going on over here. So for example, if there was an enemy over here, right, you'll be able to see that enemy's icon on your minimap, right? That's what's important about vision. It helps you track if you're in danger, helps you track if you're walking into people, helps you track where the minion waves are, and helps you track what jungle objectives are up. Now, if a jungle objective has been taken, but you don't have vision on it, it will show that it is up until you get vision and get access to the cooldown timer on the jungle camp, right? So that's pretty much it for the HUD. It's pretty straightforward, pretty basic, and we will keep moving on here.
Now, the final thing to go over, which is arguably the most important thing in League of Legends, is to turn off your chat, communicate your plays via pings. You don't need to type to people. And take your time and focus on your own gameplay and focus on what you can learn and not winning every game. This is a game, okay? It is a game. It is for fun. And if you want to be good at the game, that's great. But in order to be good at the game, you have to focus on what you can do. It may be a 5v5 team game, but you cannot control what the other people on your team do in this game. And if you focus on what everybody else is doing, and the one thing you can't control, which is what everybody else is doing, rather than the one thing you can control, which is what you're doing, you're not going to have fun playing League, okay? I have seen people who have played for years quit the game, excuse me, because they get so frustrated with the things they can't control, okay? It is a great game if you focus on yourself, if you learn, if you improve, and you find a group of people where you all can just enjoy playing your game together, right? So that's kind of the last thing here. I hope that this was helpful. Please drop a comment, a like, a subscribe. Thank you for staying till the end of the video. Let me know if I missed anything that you think would be crucial for beginners. And, let me know what you think about League of Legends if you're new. And I will see you guys in the next one.